Good evening and welcome everyone, especially those online. I hope you can hear me and we know we can hear you. I don't believe we have any apologies for absence for this cabinet, and I don't believe we have any declarations of interest for this particular agenda. Is that the case? Okay, so firstly we have feedback from the Performance and Overview Committee, and once again I would like to thank Councillor Neil and all members of that committee for their diligence in always getting feedback to Cabinet so that it can be reflected upon and used within the reporting as we move through the agenda. I'm particularly grateful for the committee in meeting at the request of officers so that two items on this agenda, the risk assessment and the just checking the revenue budget financial update, could be scrutinised before Cabinet and getting their feedback to us so swiftly that Councillor Callard has been able to reflect on it and use it in his presentation of the report as we go forward. So if you could record our thanks. We move on then to item 4, the 2024-25 revenue budget financial update. Over to you, Councillor Callard.
Thank you, Leader. The first half of the 2024-2025 financial year has seen the continuation of financial headwinds which are having a significant impact upon the Council's service operating environment. You will all have heard these before, but I'll repeat them for completeness. And they are the wider and longer lasting impact of the pandemic, both economically and socially, continues to impact the Council, particularly in the areas of homelessness, children's services, adult social care and children's additional learning needs. The cost of living challenges continue to have an impact on our communities, with a consequential increase in demand for Council services and an impact upon income generating services. And whilst headline inflation has fallen, some discrete areas of Council services continue to experience cost pressures on supplies and services alongside supply chain issues. In continuing efforts to combat inflation, interest rates have remained high, with a revised forecast suggesting that they will remain higher for longer than anticipated at the time of setting the budget. And finally, the Council continues to deal with a shortage of staff resources in some areas. At the October 2024 meeting, Cabinet received a financial update reporting a forecast budget deficit of £3,388,000. This position has since deteriorated by a further £964,000 to an updated forecast budget deficit of £4,353,000. Appendix 1 to the report details the variances in forecast spend against budget across the services, but it will come as no surprise that the greatest pressure is felt in adults and children's social care, with a combined forecast overspend of just over £4 million. With regards to the savings targets, services are currently forecasting a shortfall of £2,176,000 or 19.9% in meeting the service savings targets that were set as part of the original budget for 2024-2025. And to reflect on the previous financial update, there we were forecasting 18.8%. So there's a 1.1% deterioration in the intervening time. Full details of this can be found at Appendix 2 to this report. The budget planning framework for 2024-2025 was clear that there is a need to progress the Council on a path towards financial sustainability, including conserving an appropriate and prudent level of financial resilience, of which the Council's reserves are a key component. As a consequence, the final revenue budget proposals for 2024-2025 did not include any use of reserves to meet recurrent revenue expenditure. The delivery of a balanced budget position for 2024-2025 alongside substantial budget recovery action within schools remains fundamental in maintaining financial stability and limiting any further impact upon the Council's reserves. The ongoing financial position of the Social Care and Health Directorate remains the key risk within this forecast, making up nearly 90% of the overall budget deficit. The level and complexity of demand for both adults and children's care continues to trend upwards and is far outstripping the progress being made in placement and practice change. The ongoing programme of reviewing existing adults care provision remains challenging because of the pressure of managing new referrals and assessments. However, the positive autumn budget statement delivered by the Chancellor provided significant support for the Welsh Government budget, with indications that part of this funding will be available to support in-year budgetary pressures. Given the forecast budget deficit of £4,353,000, it's essential that all council services maintain the same financial discipline and engage in similar collective budget recovery action that saw significant improvement in the second half of 2023-2024 financial year. In order to deliver this, a range of mitigation measures will need to be implemented, including but not limited to maximising all grant and income opportunities, including the transfer of core costs into grant where conditions allow, vacancy management with a targeted freeze on filling vacant posts, bearing down on non-essential expenditure, increasing service efficiency, and maximising the opportunity to meet the costs of organisational reform from capital receipts where regulations allow. To date, services have indicated potential budget recovery measures of just over £1 million, which continue to be developed and currently sit outside of the forecast in this report. Should these be delivered in full, the overall budget deficit would reduce to £3,334,000, and we continue to support the services to take steps required in order to bring this year's budget to balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callard. Challenging and difficult, but I am confident that you and the finance team are dealing with the deficits along with every other council, the deficits that we face. Do I have any comments from Cabinet? Councillor John, good to see you online. Hello. There was a moment when my heart skipped a beat because I thought you weren't there.
Well, I thought I'd take to disappoint. Afternoon, leader. Afternoon, everyone. Two questions, please. Thank you, Councillor Callard, for the report. At the start of the financial year, you made it very clear that there's no scope for using reserves to plug in your shortfalls, basically because you'd used them up and you'd raided reserves in previous years and put off difficult decisions. But today you presented a worsening picture. Do you stand by that earlier commitment not to raid the council's already limited reserves at the end of this financial year, please?
Thank you for the question, Councillor John. I must admit, I do find it an interesting question. You know, your assertion that we've plundered the reserves in previous years. I remind you, this is only the second budget that this administration has set, and we only used a recourse for reserves in one of them. So I'm not sure that assertion is quite correct. I'd also remind you about the performance of the previous administration, which used reserves far more than this administration has over its period of time in administration. And as a result, I think if anybody plundered the reserves, it wouldn't be this administration, but perhaps those that had gone before it. And I think it's also worth reflecting on why, you know, the previous administration, your administration, and ours has felt the need to use reserves to support its revenue budget. And that would be the programme of austerity brought in by the last Conservative government. So it might be worth reflecting on that. To cover the points in your question about our recourse to use reserves this year, you're correct to say that we set this year's budget without recourse to reserves, and that's a position we hope to maintain. You've seen from this financial data that we're in very challenging circumstances, and while it's our ambition not to use our reserves to balance the budget at the end of the year, should we fail to bring this budget back into balance, then reserves, you know, are there as a, I suppose, a safety net, you know, in order that that the council can balance its budget.
Thank you. These reports, you'll appreciate, are supposed to be important, timely updates on the council's financial position, intended to offer elected members and also the public reassurance that you've got a grip on things. Can you explain why only now are we receiving a financial update for month 6 of the financial year when it's already now month 9?
Thank you, Councillor John. Month 6 takes us to the end of September. We are now in early December. The reports for this update were published in late November. 6 or 7 weeks following the end of month 6. I don't think that's unreasonable considering the amount of work that has to go into to bring these reports together. I'd also add that when the reports are published, they are using financial data which is up to date at the point that they are published. So the assumptions and data in it are current at the time they are published. I will concede that there have been times, in the past where I believe that we could have been more timely with publishing some of the financial updates, but I don't believe that that is the case this current time, and I believe that we've made significant, progress in delivering our financial updating in a timely way.
Thank you, Councillor Callard, and thank you for the questions, Councillor John. I will move us on to the next item on the agenda, our annual letter from the Public Services Ombudsman.
Leader, do we need to take the recommendations from the
we do.
Previous report?
I am very pleased that you reminded me of that, Ben. It's been a difficult week with one thing and another. Floods, car crashes, aftermath. And I apologise to those online as well as to Cabinet for not doing so. We have 8 recommendations which Councillor Callard did outline to us. Given the nature of the report, I would like to take each one separately. There are several to note. So 3.1, to note the forecast revenue budget deficit of 4,353,000, which is a deterioration of 964,000 since the previous update. Noted. The Cabinet note a forecast of 80.1% delivery of the 10,940,000 budgeted service savings required this year. This results in a shortfall in savings of 2,176,000 that is included in the already noted deficit. Noted. The Cabinet note the budgetary recovery action of 1,019,000 drawn up by services that, if delivered, will reduce the forecast deficit to 3,334,000. Noted. That we note that the negotiation of national pay agreement for local government employers is included and the outcome is expected to be within budgeted allocations. Noted. The Cabinet notes it's the budgetary risks that are built into the forecast, namely the volatility of demand for high-cost services, particularly in adults and children's social care with additional learning needs, the risk of an increased rate in the employer's contribution to the teachers' pension scheme not being fully funded, the potential impact upon the Council's financial resilience from the forecast increase in the cumulative schools reserves deficit, the risk of further non-delivery of the 10,940,000 of budgeted saving targets, the trend of reducing debt recovery, particularly within council tax, where there is a significant increase in the numbers of discounts and exemptions awarded and a slowing down in collection rates. The severely limited reserve cover available to council. Noted. And we note the forecast increase in the deficit on the cumulative schools reserves as outlined in Appendix 3 of this report for 4,870,000. Noted. The Cabinet notes that schools which are forecasting to end the coming financial year in a deficit balance have brought forward recovery plans. Noted. And that we note a forecast capital budget underspend of 93,000 alongside an indication of slippage in capital schemes of 9,298,000. And we note that too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Apologies once again. If I could move us on once more to Councillor Sandals.
Thank you, Leader. This report is the Public Service Ombudsman Wales annual letter. The link to the report is in your agenda pack. And I will say that councils provide services and make decisions which affect the lives of tens of thousands of local people. It's inevitable that sometimes people will feel the authority has made a wrong decision or has not fulfilled its duties and will access our complaints procedures to seek redress. When people are unhappy with the way their complaints have been dealt with by our own staff, they can seek redress through the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. The Ombudsman sends every council an annual letter providing a summary of the complaints they received and investigated in the previous year. They ask council to ensure that their report is brought to the attention of Cabinet and Governance and Audit Committee and provide the Ombudsman with an update of any action needed as a result of their discussions. The letter was received by Governance and Audit Committee last week, alongside the authority's own complaints report. The committee did not raise any specific matters that warranted further dialogue with the Ombudsman's office. It shows that Monmouthshire is in the lower quartile for complaints reported to the Ombudsman at 0.31 per 1,000 residents. The range is from 0.15 to 0.58, with an average of 0.36. For the first time, the Ombudsman report included a reference to the timeliness of our responses to their recommendations, and we recognise that this is an area where we need to improve. The Ombudsman report highlights that they intervened in 3 cases, 9%, compared to a Wales average of 14%. This indicates that for the most part, our thresholds and responses were considered appropriate and proportionate. Not only is it important to deal with complaints effectively, investigating and putting things right for the complainant where necessary, it's also vital to learn from every complaint to minimise the chances of the same problem occurring again. I propose that we write to the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, confirming that their report has been received by Cabinet and Governance and Audit Committee, and that their conclusions will continue to inform our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sandals. The report is very encouraging, but we cannot let up. We have to continue to maintain the standards in public life to which we have all committed. Are there any comments from Cabinet? Then I draw your attentions to the 2 recommendations. The first, that we note the content of the annual letter, and that we continue to engage with the Public Sector Ombudsman for Wales complaint standard work. Do we agree, Cabinet? Just have a show of hands. Thank you very much. I'll move us on to the agenda item 6, which is the approval of the NEAT prevention strategy. Over to you, Councillor Griffiths.
Thanks very much, Chair. This report has been prepared for Cabinet by the officer who manages the programme, Louise Welch, and with your permission, Chair, in a moment I'd like to ask Louise to summarise the report for Cabinet. It is an important topic. Currently we have around 14 young people who are not in education, employment or training. That's a figure that's fallen from around 19 COVID peak in 2021. It's a small number, and it means that the programs that Louise describes can be very person specific, tailored to the programs. Interventions are very often individually tailored. Although it's a small number, this circumstance is important to each and every one. It being in this category can affect life chances going forward, significantly affect them. Collectively, that figure of 14 at any one time will accumulate over time, and if allowed to continue, would contribute to a significant lowering in the overall productivity of the Monmouthshire economy. So for personal reasons, for economic reasons, it's important that we have an effective programme in this area. And Chair, as I say, with your permission, can I ask Louise to provide an outline?
Certainly, Councillor Griffiths. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. So our journey really for the NEAT strategy has been taking part for most of this year. This strategy, this update takes the place of the previous strategy that was in place until 2021. So we've had a period of a few years where we've seen the COVID recovery, the journey that we've gone through with that, changes to funding, which continue to be a challenge for us in this space. But it felt very much time to refocus and kind of drive this strategy forward for our young people in Monmouthshire. The process that we followed has been heavily involved with a working group of experts from different sectors within our authority and external. So we've had key members of the working group from education, social services, our Education Achievement Service, Careers Wales, for example, who've all supported, challenged and contributed to the development of the strategy and the action plan that goes with the strategy. So we've got, in terms of Welsh Government, the Youth Engagement Progression Framework, which is the overarching framework for Wales. And then our strategy is very much the local identification of priorities and actions that we wish to achieve then locally. The working group chose to align the priorities to the Youth Engagement Progression Framework. Although target setting as part of the strategy was certainly more challenging when we look at the journey that we've been through with the past few years and our aspirations to move forward with the number of young people that we're aiming to prevent from becoming NEET. We've tried to balance the provision that we have, the trends that we've seen through the past couple of years, the challenges that we face, and of course the current operational risk in terms of the funding for the prevention work that takes place. The action plan that is developed as part of the strategy draws upon lots of partners across our network, and so it's not the sole responsibility of Monmouthshire to deliver the strategy, but certainly we are responsible for and will lead that strategy forward. We continue to place a focus on the early identification of those young people most at risk so that we can support them in a timely manner before they present as NEET, so not engage in education, employment or training. That allows us to target the support and make sure that they've been given a tailored needs-led service. You'll hear when you have conversations with us and the team that are on the ground about two key data sets around NEET prevention. So we have an annual pupil destination data, which gives us the headline figures that Councillor Griffiths referred to. Each year, the count takes place on the 31st of October and is a point in time, a snapshot of the picture that we have for Monmouthshire, but every local authority in Wales. We also monitor monthly tier data, and that gives us the fluid monthly figure that we know in terms of the young people that are unknown, so we don't know their destination, or those young people who we know are confirmed as not engaged in any education, employment or training. The important thing that I've identified as part of the action plan is that we need to learn the lessons from those young people that are presented in the annual destinations data. To learn and to unpack, to look at any missed opportunities, but certainly the trends and themes that I mentioned earlier are crucial then to the journey that we go on with those young people. To give you some context of the type of themes that we see, we've seen an increase in the number of Year 12s that become disengaged from education or who've not sustained the choice that they made at Year 11, following Year 11. Low or non-attendance continues to be a key indicator for the young people that do become not engaged following leaving school at Year 11. We've also seen a small number of young people that have actually presented with no flags during or indicators whilst they've been in education. And so it poses the question around the journey that they've taken following the end of Year 11. In terms of the strategy and the action plan, our overall aim really is to ensure that there's no missed opportunities then in terms of identifying and supporting the young people of Monmouthshire.
Thank you, Louise. That was both really illustrative and insightful, but also very hopeful that we now have a plan in place which is going to really target those young people who probably need the most support to allow them to thrive as adults. I can see from the corner of my eye that Councillor Grothwaite is very keen to come in here.
Thank you, Leader. But I am keen because I think this is an important part of the complex jigsaw of county council services for young people. And I would hate to work in an authority that cut children off when they left school. We see elements of that elsewhere, and it leads to terrible consequences sometimes. I think that he is quite right in highlighting that many of the young people who leave my directorate, if you like, will be those who have a range of problems, and particularly perhaps since the pandemic, we've seen the numbers with emotional difficulties, for example, increase. And it's important that our youngsters who aren't coming out of school with the commitment to enter the world of work, or who have not got the qualifications that they hoped for out of the education system, are not dropped. And I would certainly commend really very highly the work that Louise and her team have done since I first joined the council. And the teams were struggling to get over the loss of European funding and so on. And we've not only come through that, I think we've got a service of which we can be proud. And I wonder if perhaps you could bring me up to date a little bit, Louise. Now we don't see quite as much of each other as we used to. If you could perhaps give some examples of actual initiatives in which you and your staff are working with young people, and how they're being funded these days, because I'm not sure anymore.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. So I suppose in terms of the programme that we have, I'll perhaps talk about some of the planned initiatives that we deliver, and some then of the more reactive kind of ad hoc programmes that respond to the need. So the work of the Inspire team has got 3 key strands. So we've got Inspire in School. Inspire in School supports those young people who have the highest risk of NEET following the end of year 11, and really supports them in terms of a tailored approach around broadly around their attendance, attainment, behaviour and wellbeing. What that package of support actually looks like is the trusted person that they see in school, really working with them on the challenges and the barriers they face in education, identifying action plans and forward plans for them, but crucially in terms of their next steps, providing access to additional qualifications which can bolster their tool bank, their CVs, their qualifications they've achieved, enabling positive next steps. We've also got Inspire Outreach, which is for those young people who've got an attendance of 50% or less in school with no diagnosed medical needs. That evolved really from the COVID recovery period, where young people failed to return to school in terms of attending as they had before the pandemic. And has really gone from strength to strength since we started this piece of work 2 years ago. That programme seeks to support the young person return to education and ensure that they stay in education, or certainly look at their next steps depending on what year group they're in. The final part of the puzzle really is our post-16 support, which very much targets and supports those young people who have become not engaged in any education, employment or training. And really, again, as with the other elements to the programme, seeks to identify those action plans for them to be able to move forward. We've also got some reactive and responsive programmes of support in terms of, for example, during the summer, we ran a programme called Inspired by Summer, which seeks to support those young people that could be wobbling during the summer holidays ahead of their transition, looking at a package of qualifications. So, for example, a number of young people achieved their level 2 customer service because they wanted to look at work and employment as a pathway. But also crucially the mentoring and coaching that they receive as part of that support, to be able to consider all of their options and have support during that transition. Funding wise, I'll just finish on. So currently all of the NEET prevention programmes are funded by UK Government Shared Prosperity Fund, and that funding is in place until the end of March 2025.
Thanks, Louise, and well done.
Thank you.
That's really quite impressive, given the financial challenges and resource constraints that we have, that you and the team have managed so much, Louise. So please pass on our heartfelt thanks for the work that you're doing. I think we're all going to enjoy this recommendation, as we want this revised Monmouthshire NEET reduction strategy to be delivered. So I'd ask for your approval, Cabinet.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Louise. And thank you, Councillor Griffiths. That moves us on to item 7, the former Manton House School in Chepstow. And it's over to you, Councillor Grocott.
Thank you, Leader. In the days when I was a young officer in Gwent with shoulder-length black hair, I spent many happy an hour in Manton House. It was Gwent's residential school for young people with emotional, behaviour and mental health difficulties. Over the years, times have changed, and it ceased to provide that function for Monmouthshire and surrounding authorities a few years ago in the life of the previous administration. We've been able to use a couple of the staff houses, which we've renovated and will now help us with our improvements in the pupil referral service. But the rest of the site has not been used really since the residential school was set down. It seems foolish just to be sitting on an asset like that. And so the suggestion and recommendation is that we declare it surplus to our requirements in children and young people, and that we pass it on to landlord services for disposal.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. This is something that in informal business cabinet we have been discussing for some time. So it is timely that it's come forward at this point. As Councillor Grocott outlined, it's that we agree that this is released from Learning, Skills and Economy Directorate to Landlord Services for disposal. Are we agreed, Cabinet? Great. That moves us to item 8, the strategic risk assessment. I would like to make a point of congratulating the finance team. This is something that Audit Wales has been encouraging councils across Wales to do, which is to align our financial risk and community and corporate plan of reporting so that council as a whole has a sense of the whole of authority health at this point. So it is really good to see that the strategic risk assessment has come before Cabinet today. Over to you, Councillor Callard.
Thank you, Leader. I'm presenting this report to Cabinet today to provide you with an update of the current strategic risks facing the authority. The strategic risk assessment ensures that strategic risks are identified and monitored by the authority, that risk controls are appropriate and proportionate, and that senior managers and elected members systematically review the strategic risks facing the authority. Appendix 1 to the report provides the latest strategic risk register for the Council. The format of the strategic risk register has been updated to assess risk in line with the updated policy, including applying risk appetite levels. The strategic risk assessment is a detailed document, and any significant changes or updates made to each risk can be found in the key changes column in the summary table at the start of the full strategic risk register. The Council continues to operate in a dynamic environment and has controls in place to assess, manage and mitigate, as far as possible, a variety of risks. The strategic risk register is a live document and is continually updated based on the latest evidence. This will include adjusting the focus, detail and risk levels of risks where necessary. Some of the significant progress made with mitigation measures for the risks in the last 6 months include the following. The development of a medium-term financial strategy, which sets key principles to guide medium-term financial planning and provide the link between the Council's long-term policy objectives and its financial capacity. As you'll be aware from earlier reports, significant financial risk remains in year and in the medium term for which mitigating actions are being implemented. The development of a people strategy that contains activity aimed at mitigating risks to recruitment and retention. There is immediate pressure faced within workforce planning, and the measures put in place by the people strategy are assessed to support the reduction in the risk in the medium term. Also, the development of strategies to provide the provision to meet social care needs for children requiring support in specific placements and adults who require care at home, supporting mitigation for the risks. There are continuing challenges in responding to the complexity of demand for social care support. Also, implementing a range of approaches and support to improve attendance in schools and reduce exclusions as part of mitigating school attendance and behaviours that challenge in schools which have been assigned as high risks. The development of a replacement local development plan that full Council endorsed for detailed public consultation in October 2024. This forms part of the mitigation for some risks, including climate, housing, and the risk of delays in adopting the plan is also identified. The development of a climate and nature emergency strategy underpinned by 4 action plans, the delivery of which are an important part of the mitigation of the risk around climate. And finally, the risk, the delivery around the risk of public bus services, which was previously on the risk register, has been de-escalated and is, as it's considered no longer a significant risk to the whole organisation. This risk will be monitored closely with the relevant directorate and may escalate back to the strategic risk register in future if needed. Strategic risks covered by the assessment are typically risks which could significantly jeopardise the Council's ability to achieve its objectives, statutory plans and provide operational services as planned. The risk assessment also only covers high and medium level strategic risks. Lower level or operational risks are not registered unless they are projected to escalate within the 3 years covered. The strategic risk assessment should continue to focus on medium-term risk to service delivery. The strategic risk register will regularly evolve and adapt in line with this. The up-to-date register is accessible on the Council's intranet, so members are able to utilise it at any point in the year to reprioritise their work plans as appropriate. And I'd like to thank the officers, and in particular Richard Jones, who joins us this evening, for their work in this area. And I'll finish by adding that this update was scrutinised yesterday at Performance and Overview Scrutiny Committee. They had particular questions regarding risk 2 on the report around the financial sustainability of the authority, and also risks 7 and 8 on on the register, which is regarding children and adult social care. And I was joined in that scrutiny committee meeting by Councillor Chandler, and we fed back what the authority is doing in order to mitigate these risks to that scrutiny committee, and we thank them for their scrutiny of this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Callard. This is a key document in our arsenal of tools to allow us to really keep a grip on our finances, but also remain on track on our objectives in the community and corporate plan. And we are not being asked to agree this report because it is a dynamic, ongoing one, but to note that we have reviewed it and that Councillor Collard, along with officers, will continue the routine assessment, bringing it back to Cabinet so that we can look at our risk levels as well as our risk appetite. So with that, Cabinet, do we agree to review the strategic risk assessment and continue to do so within our portfolios?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us on to the last item on the agenda, which is the Community and Corporate Plan Performance Update. That's over to me. You'll be aware, Cabinet, that our Community and Corporate Plan sets out the purpose of the Council, which for the purposes for people online is to become a zero carbon county, supporting well-being, health and dignity for everyone at every stage of life. And we have committed to delivering this with and alongside our communities. It's an ambitious plan, and we look to the long term and aims to address the complex challenges facing our county and communities. And we certainly have never claimed or expect to solve these challenges overnight. In the first years of this administration, we set a clear path with new strategies, such as our new climate and nature emergency strategy that Councillor Collard has previously referred to, our local food strategy, our economic and skills strategy. We've also updated our enabling strategies, including our people strategy and our socially responsible procurement strategy, to make sure that the authority's resources are aligned with our purpose. You'll remember we updated our measurement framework, enabling us to track progress so we can learn, adjust as we move forward, and also to see the impacts and outcomes in relation to the people who are most important within our plan, our residents and the people who work with us and for us. It also enables us to be held account to our achievements. We carried out a full self-assessment of progress during 2023 to 24. And that full assessment is an in-depth process involving workshops in all our directorates. This report that I'm bringing before you is a lighter touch update progress report over the last 6 months. It doesn't go into the same amount of detail, but it still provides us with that valuable information to help us manage the projects and work that are integral to us achieving our priorities. And the report is focused on our 6 objectives, which again, for the people online, I will remind us is a fair place to live, a green place to live, a safe place to live, a connected place to live, a learning place to live, and a thriving place to live. Each of those objectives were assessed using the scale that we use as part of our ongoing self-evaluation framework. The scores for each of these objectives are unchanged from those reported at the year end. And I would remind Cabinet that I attended a Performance and Overview Scrutiny Committee last month to enable councillors to scrutinise this report before I reported to Cabinet. And a copy of the note of that meeting is being included in our agenda pack. The feedback was extremely useful. The scrutiny committee agreed with the scorings that were given, reminded us once again for the need for benchmarking, which I absolutely agree with. And we have, as you know, Cabinet, been developing closer links with our neighbouring counties, Lanark, Gwent and Torfaen, to see where there are further areas for collaboration, but also for understanding, sharing good practice, also understanding where the challenges are and where we can learn for different ways in addressing those challenges. And we will continue to do so and increase our collaboration with other local authorities, but also other stakeholders. For example, the work we're doing on the Usk River and river pollution is one that we have worked tirelessly from the beginning with other partners, never by ourselves. And that allows us to benchmark with other initiatives going on across the Marches, for example, with the Severn catchment area up in Shropshire, where we also continue to learn. We've developed new enabling strategies, which include the medium-term financial strategy that the Council approved in July, along with the asset management plan, digital and data strategy, as well as the procurement strategy that I referred to earlier. Tackling the climate and nature emergency is one of our biggest priorities, as you know. Back in May, we adopted that strategy with the 4 action plans, which Councillor Callard referred to earlier. And we are committed to maintaining a range of services that support people in periods of vulnerability from childhood to old age. We have increased capacity across home care and significantly reduced the number of unmet care hours from 804 per week in March 2023 to 148 per week in September 2024. Overall, 98.2% of hours of long-term domiciliary care are now being fulfilled, which is a significant improvement on the position that we inherited over 2.5 years ago. We're developing children's residential and supported accommodation placements within the county, and this is an important step on our path to growing not-for-profit care for children in Wales. You will know we adopted the rapid rehousing approach, which has increased our focus on preventing people from becoming homeless by helping to tackle arrears and debt problems and enable households remain in their current accommodation. We've also taken innovative measures such as the decision to repurpose the old Severn View residential home to provide temporary accommodation. The deposit replacement local development plan, which has been approved by council and is now under consultation, sets out how land could be developed for employment and affordable housing in future, including commitment to targets, which is 50% affordable housing and ensuring that all our future housing development will be net zero. If we achieve this, Cabinet, we will have met a key part of our priorities, but also we will be leading the way in Wales for this kind of development. I also acknowledge that there are areas of challenge which we continue to work on, and one of those is our ability to monitor with agility our progress towards impact. I'm glad to say we are moving in that direction. It takes time. And we are working collaboratively with other services through the SRS to develop our ability to analyse our data and use it. And I think that is undoubtedly going to help us going forward. So I commend this assessment to you. As with any assessment to do with our work as a cabinet, as a council, it is a work in progress, and that's how it should be seen. We want to see improvements, but we also want to focus on those areas which need adjustments or have opportunities for developing in new directions. Is there any comments that you'd like to make from your own areas, Cabinet? Councillor Chandler.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I would like to highlight a few things, if I may, because obviously social care is quite often portrayed as a challenge for local authorities because of the financial pressures that are around it. But I really want to emphasise actually that we need to see social care in maybe a different way. It is one of the jewels in sort of British society in terms of what we do. We laud the NHS. We need to laud social care alongside that because it provides so much support and independence to people to be able to live the lives they want to live at home or to live safely in other ways, whether they be adults or children. So I do want to sort of make sure that we emphasise the importance there, but also the achievements you highlighted. And I'm very grateful for that. The significant improvement we've made in meeting domiciliary care needs and the hours and the workforce, which is really good. I want to also in that area talk about the Seven View Park residential home for people with dementia that we opened. It was open in March, which is before the period of this thing. But this last 6 months, we've been residents have moved in, and we've been embedding practice in the home. And to be honest, what we've seen now, and we had the official opening, was it 2 months ago? What we've seen is that the aspirations that we had for a really innovative and groundbreaking residential home for people with dementia has been fulfilled, and this really is a beacon for Wales to look at in terms of how care can be delivered. So I do want to highlight that and to praise the efforts and of the staff who have had to really transform their ways of working to deliver that mandate. I think that's good. I think in children's as well, I want to highlight the fact that in terms of the milestones in the report, we've made great strides to moving things forward. So we agreed the new placement strategy for children and young people who are care experienced, and now we've had one new home for 16 plus supported accommodation that's already opened and has its residents in there. We've got another one in the pipeline. We've got a new children's home which is very soon to be opened, and again we've got another one in the pipeline to open later on next year. So we're making real tangible differences. I think we've gone from strategy into delivery in these areas. So I think that's really good. And I suppose the final thing I just wanted to emphasise is that we're moving towards looking ahead, and I think it's useful for Cabinet and other people viewing to recognise that we want we're in the process of developing a whole authority approach to promoting well-being and independence amongst our population, particularly amongst our more vulnerable groups, scaling up the measures that we have to try and prevent or delay people's needing to call upon statutory support from the council, where we're going to be bringing together everything from scaling up our assistive tech work through our work in leisure and communities, as well as our work across social care, and of course how we're working with third sector organisations and local communities and neighbourhoods to provide the support that people need to live the lives that they want to be able to live. And I think, this is a positive message for social care, despite the financial pressures that we're over. And I just really wanted to take this opportunity to highlight that and to thank the workforce for all they're doing and for the transformative work that's going on, because it is making a real impact on people's lives. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. It's important that you have raised before us that so much innovation and transformation is actually going on in spite of those big challenges that all across Europe is being faced within adult and children's social care. Because often we forget that, don't we? When we're in the midst of looking at budgets, the financial constraints, of the challenges that we face, we forget to pause and look at what has been achieved. So thank you. Councillor Maybe, I see you.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight Monmouthshire's success in waste management, as it's such an important part of our sustainability agenda. I think we can be proud of what's been achieved by the council and the community together, achieving in 2023 to 24 at 71.8% of municipal waste reused, composted or recycled. That puts us a very close third in ranking in Wales amongst the 22 local authorities on this target. We're just below Pembrokeshire at 72%, and a superb 72.8% by Bridgend. The Welsh average is 66.6%, and Wales is second in the world as a country on recycling. And I think on this issue, quite rightly, there are ever more demanding targets to reach, and it's not the end of the story. And as you get better, the next bit gets even more difficult to achieve. But we're in a good place now, and it's really quite an achievement. And it's thanks to everybody in the community, but with the leadership of the County Council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Maybe. Councillor Grover.
Thank you, Leader. I think much has been said about the problems faced by education around the whole of Wales and the whole of the UK in the time since the pandemic. And I think that I'd like to pay my highest congratulations to some of our staff who've been working with some of the most challenging young people in our education and school system. And perhaps to highlight one or two areas where I think we're making a real difference in helping to drive through the commitments that we bought when we formed the administration. I'd highlight, I think, recently, the link that we have formed with the Autism Education Trust, the first such link in the whole of Wales. And also to link with that changes in areas like the Pupil Referral Service and the work it's doing, because these are two areas where we're working with some of our most challenging young people, whether it's a sort of neurological background or a social economic background. We have taken steps to actually be able to address and meet the needs of individual pupils. So our inclusion service now contains a vulnerable learner lead who's working with schools to try to prevent young people being excluded and working hard in that area, because again, we are in common with the rest of Wales seeing exclusions of young people from schools at a rate we've not seen before. We've seen the numbers of young people educated other than at school at a higher rate than ever before. And we are able to produce the expertise to meet the needs of those young people, and to do that at an individual level. And in all the years I spent in education, that is not an approach that people in Britain have been well known for achieving in the past. I think Monmouthshire is at the forefront of such individualised support, and it means that, for example, we are now able to educate in local communities children that until very recently would have been sent to residential school, sometimes miles away from their families, friends and communities. And I think we've made a real achievement in the lives of young people who are among the most challenged in our society.
Thanks, Councillor Groker. I think both you and Councillor Maybe illustrate two things, really, that once you really focus on our key principles of tackling inequality, looking at inclusion in different ways, to thinking how we cannot take our eyes off the ball in terms of climate and nature needs, but we do it together and we find ways of thinking outside the box, we start slowly to see progress. We have not achieved what we need to achieve, but given the challenges that we face in education, that we face in meeting our environmental targets, we are showing and offering hope to our residents that by working together, we can see tangible differences. I saw you had your hand up, Councillor Birch. and welcome to the cabinet. This is your first time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, and I was just going to say that returning after a break, it is really remarkable how many projects which were at their inception a year ago are now, coming to fruition and actually delivering. And I'm particularly delighted to see the reduction in the numbers of people in bed and breakfast accommodation, which I believe has actually fallen further since this report was produced. So that's just one area where we're really making a difference to people's lives, despite the very, very limited resources and the challenges that the authority faces.
Indeed, and it's partly to the work you did previously in the cabinet of driving through our housing transition strategy, that the numbers of homelessness at the beginning of this administration has really, really gone down because of the ways that we're working in a multi-agency way. But really, from a preventative point of view, a whole of authority approach to get that numbers down. But we can't let up.
It's a hugely demanding role for the officer team, but I think they are very impressive.
Is anybody else? If so, I'll bring in Councillor John.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm not going to join in the backslapping, though. I'm afraid this entire report is basically, as cabinet members, you're all patting each other on the back and marking your own homework instead of the cabinet assessing its own performance. Do you think it would not be more valuable to have more independent and impartial evaluation of performance?
Thanks, Councillor John. I'll come back to that sentence to do with value to have independent and impartial evaluation of performance as I respond to your question, because like any other organisation, we produce a wide range of performance indicators and metrics that are used to run services and demonstrate progress. We also conduct an annual self-assessment, which is in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Elections Act of 2021. And this is examined by scrutiny before being presented to the full council, as it's being done here, so that councillors have the opportunity to debate that annual report and challenge the assessment if they do not feel it is accurate or honest. This progress report was presented to scrutiny, and they did not challenge it in terms of accuracy and honesty. As you'll be aware, in addition to the work of our internal audit team, we're inspected by Audit Wales. We pay an annual fee of £118,000 to Audit Wales for them to conduct a wide range of performance audit work. This is in addition to the financial and other auditing which they undertake and is completely independent. We're also inspected by the Care Inspectorate of Wales and Estyn. The findings of all external audit reports are presented to our independently chaired Governance and Audit Committee. They will often refer to the findings to scrutiny committees where appropriate. So return to your question here, a little history lesson. Let me take you back in time to May 2022. If you remember, Councillor John, that's when we became the administration, and we inherited from the previous council that you led a performance system which concentrated on reporting and monitoring on activities, that is what they did, not on the quality of the outcomes or the impacts of the activities on Monmouthshire's residents, with lots of pats on the back for completing activities or winning grants. And surprisingly, given how much you appear to value the independent and impartial evaluation of performance, the last time that happened was prior to the last administration. It was between 2014 and 2015, almost 10 years ago. The current administration, on the other hand, has committed to reporting and monitoring on the outcomes and impacts of our actions on our residents and on the environment and nature. And we use, as is shown in our self-assessment report and other reports that we bring to scrutiny on a routine basis, that we use the information to improve the performance of the council. So much so, Councillor John, Audit Wales, in feedback from its deep dive review of performance management arrangements carried out in September and October this year, commended the Council in being proactive in finding areas for improvement for adopted structured tiers of challenge at directorate and corporate level to mitigate against risks of optimism bias and positivity, something that they had noticed in self-assessment prior to 2022. Audit Wales found our latest self-assessment to be an honest reflection which identified relevant areas for improvement. Not necessary for a pat on the back here, and I happily acknowledge that self-assessment is only part of what we must do and do to monitor and evaluate the Council. The 2021 Act also requires us to appoint an independent panel to assess the extent to which the Council is meeting its performance requirements at least once every electoral cycle. We've signalled to the WLGA, who are coordinating this work, we intend to commission the panel during the second half of 2025-26. Taken together, I would hope that residents can see that far from marking our own homework, the arrangements we have in place is more like sitting in an invigilated and externally moderated exam. I believe you have another question.
Thank you for that answer. Given the collapse in business confidence resulting from your Chancellor's budget, are you concerned that, according to the report, fewer businesses in Monmouthshire are receiving support from the Council compared to the previous year?
You'll know, Councillor John, that our community and corporate plan commits to provide more support for people who wish to start their own business. So in 2023-24, the number of people provided assistance to started their own business was 80, and 85 existing businesses were supported at a total of 165. In 2024-25, for quarter 1 and 2, 28 people were provided assistance to start their own businesses, and 14 existing businesses were supported. This is slightly underperformance than was anticipated, but our business support team are confident that the target of 180 by the end of quarter 4 will be achieved. External factors have impacted on quarter 1 and 2 figures, such as a member of the business support team left at the start of quarter 1 and appointment of a new member of the staff during quarter 1-2. But we are confident that there is no reduction in the level of business support from the Council, and our businesses offer is continually promoted through various media platforms and networks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John. The recommendation for the performance update is this again becomes a tool in our arsenal, and that we use this as part of our continuous monitoring of how effectively it's delivering our objectives, and that we use it to identify where we're not on track, how we improve, what we need to do to adjust. Are we agreed, Council?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. We've agreed, and that brings us to the end of Cabinet for this evening. Thank you very much for everyone attending, and thank you very much for everyone on the line listening. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Thank you.